I think one of the biggest challenges we have real estate agents is, let's get past these in different fears that come up in front of us.
Yes. Yeah.
And let's overcome them and see how we can overcome them. And once that is, the sales process becomes far less stressful.
Absolutely. And I'm really glad you said that, because even what we've talked about so far, if somebody's literally brand new, it can seem daunting. Like there is a lot to consider. And again, I'm just going to reiterate, that's why there are experts in these different areas. That's why there are real estate lawyers. That's why there are mortgage brokers. That's why there are real estate agents to help people through this process. So, because it doesn't have to be, that intimidating. You have professionals who can, walk through every step of it with you. And I think that makes all the difference. Welcome to the Timbits and Tacos Real Estate Podcast with me, Wendy Pauls, and my good friend and fellow agent, Rick Parks. So today I thought it'd be helpful for us to talk about, because I'm really interested to hear some of the differences there versus here, what people need to think about or do before buying a property. So I think there's probably some things in common, like across the board, like wherever you're buying a property. But I suspect there's also some, differences in the process by area or region. So
I think the primary difference that you and I face when we're dealing with buyers is 95% of your buyers are going to be mortgage based.
Ah, okay.
95% of my buyers are going to be cash only.
Ooh, okay.
Okay. We're just not, we don't have the mortgage facilities set up to, like there's a couple companies here that will lend to Canadians, but whole, 95% of my customers are showing up and saying, I have this amount of money in the bank. Let's go spend this amount of money.
Ah, all right. All right. So what if somebody does need to, borrow some money to buy a property there? Would it be better for them to get financing here, like borrow off the equity?
Or every single time for a variety of reasons. I mean, and the nice thing that you're experiencing in Ontario is that you've had such an influx in the value of your properties. Your equities have gone up so significantly that you have the ability to play a little bit. And so, you say, okay, we'll just some quick numbers. Let's say you have a home that's worth $1 million and you've owned it for 10 years. You've got a $200,000 mortgage on it that you're still carrying. You can probably borrow up to 80% of that on a home equity line of credit. So you've got 60% of the value of your home basically available for purchasing something. So now you're coming to me saying, Rick, we've got, to be conservative, we've got 500,000 Canadian that we have available to us. What can we get for, 350 or 400,000 American dollars? Okay. And you come down, you begin to shop. And this is where the mortgage begins to come into place. You come in, you say, boy, these places at 350 are okay, but we love that place over there for $6. Okay. So now you're going, where do we get this extra 250? That's when we begin to apply the mortgage. And so and one of the key issues to mortgages here is to get into a mortgage here, you're going to have to start at 40% down minimum. Okay. So you need to be coming in strong. And then that gets you past a lot of the barriers that you face in Canada, where people are coming in with 5 or 10% down and they've got all these rules in place. Sure. If you show up with 40% down, they're like, here's your money. That's basically how they work here. Okay. So once somebody has that substantial down payment, then it's fairly easy to qualify for the it's basically a rubber stamp, especially if you're working through a developer. Okay. If it's a developer, they're not even looking at credit ratings. Because they don't care about credit ratings here, in the sense that what we do in the same way that we do in Canada, we're not so bound to them. So it's really, you've got 40% down, great. Here's your payments for the next 10 years. Okay, so that is very different from here. So for people who don't know, I tell people before we even, go shopping,
you need to be pre-qualified. You need to know. So one of the things you need to know right out of the gate is what your real budget is that you're shopping with, right? There's no use going out and looking if you don't know that you can afford that. That's just teasing yourself, right? So
and wasting your time.
sure, yes, wasting both of our time, like
Exactly.
mine,
Yeah, very much
mine
so.
and theirs. Yeah, yeah. And so that's not an ideal way. So I like people to go speak to either like a bank or mortgage broker. And actually, I recommend people talk to both because there's kind of different options, different rates, different, terms, all those kinds of things. So I think it's good for people to kind of have conversations with both. There's no cost in having conversations. So I think it's
Well, I remember when you were here a month ago, we had a really interesting conversation about the difficulty of getting a mortgage on rural property.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'd never even thought of that. I'm like, well, because I'm not in that world. I don't understand. To me, if you got the money and you've got the mortgage, you got your percentage guaranteed, and what it says on their website should be what you have to pay. And all of a sudden, you're getting these rules put in place. Well, if you aren't within this close to a fire hydrant, or you've got cows on your property, then you're going to have to pay this much more percentage on your mortgage.
Exactly.
It can be extremely frustrating, especially when you've got a buyer who's set up, here we've established that I can afford a $1 million property at this percentage. And all of a sudden your buyer says, I've got my heart set on this $1 million property. The banks are going, yeah, but we got to add a couple percents.
Right. Right. Yes. So there's a lot of pre-work here that it sounds like there's not there. Like you really do want to get things in place. You want to speak to the experts, the mortgage experts, and find out, okay, so here's the budget you're working with. Tell that then to your agent, and then you go out shopping. Another thing people will want to know, we take some of these things for granted because we have an understanding, but what kind of down payment does somebody need? So that's pretty clear, as you said, in your market. In ours, there's different options. Sorry?
So your down payments vary. I understand that. What about closing costs?
Closing cost is something else that people need to factor in. Now, again, if they're working with, a good lender, good mortgage broker, they will go into detail with all of that. So before anything is finalized, they're going to be crystal clear. But I think it's helpful to really understand that up front, right? Before, again, you even start the process.
And can you, again, it's been a long time since I've had to buy a property in Canada. Can you wrap your closing costs into your mortgage, or is that money you have to have available separate from your mortgage?
I can't answer that for sure, but there is some money typically that you have to have available, but I don't know if that varies, by lender, if there's different kind of options. Right. And again, this is when I typically defer. I give like high level information to my clients, but I'm saying, honestly, go speak to the mortgage professional. This is their area of expertise. I'm going to help you with the, looking for a house and that part of it. But when it comes to the financing, I try not to give, too much information or advice.
I'm quite willing to defer to those people that are experts.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that is another important thing for people to know. I mean, so young people or just people saving for their first home need to have an idea, I think, what is required for a down payment. And that depends whether they're going to go with the government insured mortgages, right? Where you can put 5% down, but then they need to be aware there is then, you pay a little bit more for that opportunity. Or, if you don't want to have any of that fee, then you're going to need 20% down. Well, a lot of people for a first home, if you look at prices now in Waterloo region, like who can afford 20% down, even on a $500,000 home, which you'd be tough to find. So,
and you and I both have, kids in their 20s who have young families and are just starting careers. There's just, even though we're very proud of our children and they're making good money and they're doing so much better than we did when we were their age, how on earth can they possibly generate that type of cash in pocket to be able to get themselves started in these? I mean, it's tough. I get it.
we're seeing a lot of like family help, right? Parents
Yes.
helping out either with a down payment or, I mean, one of the things that we've done with one of our kids is buy with them, right? So we're co-owners of the home.
Right.
And that was a way that we could kind of help them get into the market because again, it's just would be really, really tough to try and have $100,000 to $150,000, you know, in the bank. So the 5% down is certainly advantageous for people, and they're just going to have to pay a little bit of, you know, mortgage insurance on top of that, and at least can get in.
Down here, one of the challenges we face outside of the mortgage scenario is that closing cost. Can be about 5%, and that's a hard number for a lot of people to swallow. It depends where they come from. If I get someone coming from British Columbia, they're like 5%, no problem. You know, we've been taxed forever on these type of things. Where someone from Alberta is like, we tax? What are you talking about? You know, so it does vary a little bit from where they come from. But you know, when you say on $1 million home, you've got a $50,000 closing cost. That's a fairly substantial chunk that they have to put into their minds, and I have to have this cash available.
Yeah.
So that is, you know, again, those are my first 10 minutes of conversation with anyone once they jump into my car. Okay, let's talk about the process of buying here in Mexico, what it looks like.
Sure. Sure. And in case I forget to mention it later in our conversation, I want to let people know that we have a link that they can just book an appointment with either of us if they have questions about this or kind of anything real estate related. We have scenarios. We can kind of run numbers, like take a house price and kind of figure out what all those costs would be to give them an idea. So if there's people listening and wondering, gosh, like what are we talking about? We could give them a very good idea of what that could be.
Sure.
So so we'll just let them know that. I think one of the other things when I think about what people should know before buying a house is to get really clear on what their priorities are. And I'm talking about the differences between like what's actually important and what's it would be nice, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes people put together a wish list, and the wish list you might not get. Actually, you might not get it at several price levels, but certainly when you're kind of starting out. So one of the biggest factors, obviously, always in real estate is location. And that idea of location can be very specific. So somebody might need to live within like walking distance or public transportation of their work. But like years ago, when we moved to where we are now, our location was a very big area. We just wanted to be somewhere within Waterloo region. But again, so those were our important things. And then within that, you know, criteria, then there's other things like how many bedrooms do we need? How many bathrooms do we need? And need and want, again, are different, right? Yeah. Sometimes you have to give on something to get something else.
We need this, but we can work with this until we can add this. Yeah. Which is what in your home, you know, you came in, got a 3-bedroom home. Yep. But I know you fixed up your basement, you added a bedroom into the basement, you did a lot of things to add that more space you needed down the road.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And things like garage.
The thing we get asked every time is, I want to be close to the beach. I want to be on the beach. And then I put the number in front of them. And they go, well, maybe we can be a block off the beach.
Okay. And what price difference could we be talking between on the beach and a block from the beach?
So a very nice 2-bedroom condo and a really decent development, you're going to be about $800,000 to be on the beach. That's a realistic number. Maybe you get in the 700s. I take you a block off the beach, we drop down to 500,000.
Okay. Yeah.
It's pretty significant. Yeah.
Considerable difference. Yeah. We'd have some of that, maybe not to that degree with the Great Lakes, like in Southern Ontario, or, you know, being right on the Grand River, you know, waterfront properties. Certainly there's a premium, probably not that much, but it, you know, probably depends, you know, where you are, what your view is and so on. But
yeah. And again, when both of us are in regions that have a very strong buyer's market, or seller's market, I should say, in the sense that there's a high demand for property. So anytime you've got a high demand for property, the most valuable properties, those properties on the water, those properties in those key areas, they tend to go up even more aggressively than the properties that are, you know, on a scale of 10, they're at the 8 as opposed to the 10. You know?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. And then when I think about other things people should think about, it reminds me of when you buy a car. So you can buy a used car and you get to a certain age where you know you're going to be running into repairs, or you kind of pay more upfront for a newer car, and unless you have a lemon, your repair costs are likely to not be as high. So, you know, when I'm taking people out and they're looking at 100-year-old, like a century home or something like that, are they prepared to, are they able to handle some of the upcoming repair costs? What has been done? You know, when was the roof done? Some of the big ticket things, right? How old is the furnace? What's the foundation like? When you get into these situations, and actually even all of the things we've talked about, I know I'm biased as an agent, but being in the business, it has showed me the value of working with an agent as a buyer. I know some buyers think they can just go, you know, kind of direct, but honestly, the whole process now in working with people, I can see how important it is to have somebody helping you consider all of these things we're talking about and point out potential issues with properties.
I think that rings true in almost every market of the world, because the issues you face in Ontario, I mean, we don't even have basements. We don't care about basements.
Yeah,
you know,
no leaky basements.
But you need to know you need a realtor to know that you should not be buying from that developer.
Okay.
What to look for? I mean, you come from Canada. You're coming down, and your homes are primarily made out of sticks, out of wood wrapped in Trirex, and then with brick stuck on the side or siding stuck on the side.
That reminds me of, and I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down.
we are built out of concrete. Everything here is built out of concrete.
Like concrete block? Or poured?
Traditionally, yes, concrete block. Okay. Over the years, that's now been changing. They're using foam core, they're using some other variables to that scenario, but it still is a very different building process than we've ever had to deal with in Canada. We just, we don't do those things. So again, you need to have a realtor to understand those type of differences. So it varies from market to market. So even when I get a real estate agent who wants to come down here and buy in Cabo, I say to them, okay, wipe your head clean of all this little detail stuff that you know about building in Ontario, because it's very different from building here or buying new here. What you need to look for is very different. Give you an example. You walk into a 10-year-old concrete home, and you may look up and you may see where some water has come through, because concrete is a porous product.
Yep.
That's not unusual, and it's a very easy fix. And there's not going to be any mold involved. There's not going to be this scary thing, there's water inside my house, where if you saw that in a home in Ontario, you would run out of that home screaming. Yeah,
this is a big issue. We're going to have problems.
Here, we've got to spend a few $100s and reseal the roof. Those things need to happen. So it's those type of conversations that sometimes when you move people from one location that, a place where they've grown up their whole lives, where they're understanding how things are done, to an entirely different location where things are done completely different. There's an education process, and you better have a real estate agent.
So is there anything that you think on either side that we've missed that, you would tell somebody, hey, I'm thinking of buying, and you say, here's what you need to think about? Well,
the only other obvious aspect here in Mexico is when we get this question asked all the time, am I leasing this property? Because they've heard that they're going to lease this property, they can't really buy the property. And that's not necessarily true.
Okay.
What we use down here is something called a fideicomiso, which is a bank trust. Okay. So without going into all the detail, and I'll have set an appointment on the link below, and I'll have to explain this all to you.
Happy to go into detail. Yep.
Go to all through it. But basically, when you buy a property here as a foreigner, you are buying a bank trust that owns the property in your name.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And there's some great positives to that, as there's positive and negatives on both sides of that. Sure. And certainly it is a discussion that I need to have with a buyer about what that's going to look like, what that's going to cost, what it's going to feel like, how it's going to affect you, even in the times of, say, how it's going to affect your will down the road, and how you need to set that up properly so that it's a smooth transition of your assets to your beneficiaries.
Oh my goodness. So, I mean, yeah, as somebody who doesn't understand that at all, I would totally see the need to work with a good.
And my statement would be, this is probably a conversation that will take another video at some point. But again, I mean, that type of conversation is the type of conversation I encourage. Contact me, let's sit, let's talk, let me explain this all out to you so that you're not fearful of it. I think one of the biggest challenges we have real estate agents is, let's get past these in different fears that come up in front of us.
Yes. Yeah.
And let's overcome them and see how we can overcome them. And once that is, the sales process becomes far less stressful.
Absolutely. And I'm really glad you said that, because even what we've talked about so far, if somebody's literally brand new, it can seem daunting. Like there is a lot to consider. And again, I'm just going to reiterate, that's why there are experts in these different areas. That's why there are real estate lawyers. That's why there are mortgage brokers. That's why there are real estate agents to help people through this process. So, because it doesn't have to be, that intimidating. You have professionals who can, walk through every step of it with you. And I think that makes all the difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Future episode, we'll just give people a heads up. I would like you, this is a heads up for you. I'd like you to do a little why Cabo versus Florida.
Oh, please, yes. Anytime
I got excited about it, and I thought, because we have a lot of people who, at least snowbird in Florida, and I'm like, ooh, I'd like to hear Rick kind of defend Cabo. So
all day long, I would love to do it, and we'll start with the tacos, and we'll just go from there.
Ooh, amazing. All right. Well, I think that's all for today. If people like this video, we would love if they do click the like button and subscribe to the channel to get more of this information. We've already talked about our appointment button. So adios and goodbye.
See ya.